Because of the economic model, the newspaper industry has been shrinking drastically from the last 50 years of the 20th century in some states of America. Also, as the economic model changed, newspapers increased the cash flow. We can start to feel panicky and anxious and lose focus. It's important to note that you can have this feeling even if there's hardly anything to do at all. Hence, to release such stress, people could use a calendar to schedule and find a balance between play and work. Time management helps you to reduce long-term stress by giving you direction when you have too much work to do. It puts you in control of where you are going and helps you to increase your productivity. The key is to let the initial ideation phase happen independently and in silence so we can separate egos from ideas. Silence is just one alternative. Since meetings have different goals, there's no reason they all have to look or sound the same. This is an application of Darwin's theory of natural selection to modification of old buildings, which means buildings should adapt to the new world to survive, or be pulled down. Internet was invented by people who were good at programming, and people keep optimizing it for different purposes. So Internet has been growing organically. Internet can achieve many things, but has advantages and disadvantages. It turns out consumers are incredibly smart. They combine a lifetime of experience with that brand, combined with whatever its designed appeal is, how it makes them feel, performance and price. So happiness economics can help us get to these questions, and I'll try to give you some examples of this. Now, even though there's a lot of skepticism, originally about using this surveys what people say make them happy. Human activities, such as burning fossil fuels, are warming Earth's climate. The climate crisis has widespread ramifications. Ecologists are worried that many species will become extinct, because they might not be able to adapt to a climate change that's faster than most naturally occurring ones. Two millennia later, at the start of the Bronze Age, dogs averaged about 40 pounds. By the Roman period, 2,000 years ago, dogs clocked in at more than 50 pounds. In other words, dogs went from the size of a large beagle to the size of a husky. That's some major growth in just 6,000 years. So, there must be better ways to regulate emotion aside from ruminating and venting that help keep aggression at bay. And it turns out, that has a lot to do with how much a person is aware of and able to classify their emotions. This is called emotion differentiation. Researchers have found evidence that dogs may have cognitive deficits like those of people with this syndrome. The findings might tell us about far more than just how social devotion to humans evolved in dogs. By contrast, working together to find food wouldn't help forest-dwelling, insect-eating weaver birds as much, since insects tend to be more widely dispersed. There are a lot more suitable nesting sites in the forest, so these birds don't need to live in colonies, and monogamy makes sense for birds with more solitary lives. What is precipitation? Clouds hold millions of tiny water droplets. Over time, a cloud can hold more and more tiny droplets of water and pieces of ice. Wind and temperature make the droplets and pieces bump into each other. They then group together, they get bigger and heavier until they are too heavy to stay in the cloud. Other animals communicate without making a sound. Elephants show affection by wrapping their trunks around each other. Whales leap out of the water to send messages to their friends. Bees perform a special dance when they have located nectar in a tree. Clouds are made up of tiny water droplets. So, when condensation occurs in the sky, clouds form and grow. Let's take a closer look. When water droplets bump into one another, they stick together and grow in size. They continue to grow until they are too heavy and fall as rain. A UFO, unidentified flying object, is any object flying in the sky which cannot be identified by the person who sees it. Sometimes, the object is investigated. If people can still not figure out what the project is after an investigation, it's called a UFO. We know that living things have changed over time because we can see their remains in the rocks. These remains are called fossils. So, we know that the animals and plants of today are different from those of long ago, and the further we go back, the more different the fossils are. It turned out to be that people who had type O were actually able to survive an attack of malaria. It appeared that malaria organism was more readily able to attach to red cells that were type A or type B, and actually kill those patients before they have a chance to reproduce. The extra blood can cause blood vessels to swell and tissues to press on the sensitive membrane that surrounds the brain, resulting in a headache. But not everyone develops a headache at moderately high altitudes, partly because the low oxygen content of the air causes the climber to breathe more often, forcing carbon dioxide out of the blood.